But when you measure it flat, it contradicts that. I'm spitting flat facts and that. And I know you don't like that. Google Maps is flat, it presents elevation profiles like that. I'm a spitting flat earth king. Sentence has a ring, doing my own thing. If earth was a big roast chicken, factually finger licking chicken. We just got the measurements missing. I'm spitting eggs and begs, begging the question lesson. I've said it before, time after time. I'm the spitting flat earth king of rhyme.
Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe. Hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live. And there's also a coffee, Patreon, crypto and thanks button in the info box below the video. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show on Facebook and X. Now we are joined by Neil, Surf Daddy, Adam, Sensual Goat, Click OK, and a whole bunch of people in the Flipside Discord server. So welcome one and all.
How are you?
Morning.
Good morning.
6'7".
Did you say 6'7" because I was talking about taking my kid to an optician's?
No, I was just being cool.
Oh, you're just one of the cool kids. Well, fair enough.
See, we don't have to be cool. We are just cool.
You sing Darling Hold My Hand, and I'll talk about Jet 2 holidays for a little bit. Darling, hold my hand. No, you're going to do the Jet 2 bit, right? No? I thought you were one of the cool kids. Clearly not. You have no idea of modern memes, do you? You know what the kids are calling this year? The Great Meme Reset.
Yeah, well, they're not cool.
Cooler than us. We're in our 40s, 50s and 60s. And 30s, going by my statistics of the people that are watching currently. Not a great deal of audience from the teens and 20s. Less of an audience from people in their 70s.
Well, we're cool in this subject we find ourselves in. We're the coolest cats in town.
What makes you think that? I mean, I'm talking currently about how dweeby we are and how insignificant we specifically are with respect to the subject that we are experts in.
That's what makes us cool. We recognize this.
Self-reflection and introspection does not necessarily make you cool, though. I'm still not with you. I'm trying to square this circle myself. I mean, I know I am cool. However, we're covering just geography. We might as well be geography teachers. So when I go out and take my kids to the theatre, you try and play the who's the geography teacher game when you look for the weirdest, dweebiest looking teacher. You go, he is the geography teacher. Well, that's us. We're geography teachers, basically.
By coming to an understanding that we are totally insignificant in how Earth is measured, that makes us cool. Well, we can recognize this, and after being in a topic for 10 years and able to recognize this and move forward, makes us freaking totally cool.
Cool is kind of a way of being. I'm sure there are cool geography teachers out there, but from my memory at school, the cool teachers were normally the science teachers, right? They're making things go bang and talking about outer space. Now, don't get me wrong, this appeals mainly to 12-year-olds, but my 12-year-old self can remember Mr. Durham. He's probably the only teacher I can remember the name of because he was a cool science teacher. And describing how, evacuating a gas canister. So he had a tin can that was long and thin, and he shoved a compressor in it, sucked it, and you heard bang, and it crushed in on itself. And you were like, whoa, as it made you jump. And he was like, yeah, well, that's what happens when you evacuate all of the air pressure from within this can. The outside pressure is the same, but there's nothing to equalise the pressure against the walls. Therefore, eventually the outside pressure crushes the can. I'm like, wow, that's cool. And I asked him, how much did the can cost you? He's like, oh, nothing. The school would have paid for it. He said, if I was paying for the can, it'd be done like that. And he drew a picture previously to the demonstration on the blackboard with the crushed can. He's like, that's how you'd be learning about it if I had to pay for the can. And everybody laughed. And I remember thinking, cool science teacher. The geography teacher, I can't remember what he looks like. I can't remember his name. He could have been a woman. I can't even remember. I mean, I basically remember isobars and a little bit about mapping. I also remember them talking about volcanoes and tectonic activity, the Ring of Fire. There's a few things that stuck in my mind, but mainly because I've had my memory jogged of those things since coming into this subject. I think by the age I am, I'd have long forgotten about tectonic plates and volcanoes and all the things that are not necessarily proven to be true, even just part and parcel of a conspiratorial flat Earth subject. Because for whatever reason, when talking about Earth's surface, you need to talk about everything but the measurements, infer the sphericity derived from those flat measurements that no one's actually highlighting or talking about as the main focus, and then introduce all sorts of other conspiratorial nonsense like tectonic plates and the reasons and causes of gravity of volcanoes and volcanic activity. So those, what will we call them, speculations, let's just say, are part of the geography class. So there's always going to be a certain degree of bullshit like there is in every single class, with the exception of probably maths and English. Those are kind of as it is subjects. When it comes to learning how maths functions, or any advanced mathematics, it kind of is what it is. Same goes for English literature and English language. You can either learn how to spell and speak and string a sentence together, or you can't. You can either put that to great effect and write a book with it, or you can't. Those are kind of skills that, in terms of your ability to utilise said language, you can be taught it in a very matter-of-fact manner. You know, you don't necessarily bullshit people when you're talking about how a language that's going to form communication works. The communication itself has the bullshit within it, not the method, not the means of communication, which would be English, right? Are there any other subjects that don't necessarily have anything that you could bullshit around other than maths and English? Maybe there is. What I majored in, performing arts, was just teaching you how to express bullshit physically to somebody visually. But the whole purpose of performing arts was to convey a suspension of disbelief. Look it up, I'm not going to go through it in this particular episode of Flat Earth Debate, but the suspension of disbelief is something highly sought after, and when you look into it, which is why I've got a wry smile, part and parcel of many other different languages and communication structures that are used to bullshit you. The languages are used to get you to suspend disbelief. Now, that's not English bullshitting you. In this case, it's performing arts. But that's what we're all dealing with. Most things are a performance. Sometimes people get a bit shocked and shaken about that, right? If you look at what a persona is, right, how you put yourself onto most people, there's a automatic assumption that a persona isn't being utilised when you're just being yourself. I would disagree and say that everything you do includes your persona, and the personas, plural, that you have are many and varied. Now, if you go to an extreme where people can't form their own personality, that's to say they don't have that individual behaviour that they can ascribe to themselves, they go out and steal other people's personalities and wear them like masks. Then you're into the narcissistic end of the scale. But how people behave is all performative. How you talk to even the person that you're most comfortable with is still, to a certain extent, performative. Hopefully, some of the audience are recognising this with the current subjects that we're covering and can introspectively analyse how they are. Because not only is this persona projected out onto other people, it can also be projected in upon oneself. That is to say, you pretend to be something you're not to yourself. Now, we've covered this in a very fine way, or a very small way, let's just say, when we're talking about how the dweebs do that. That's to say our opponents who've recently got a bit too big for their own boots are now being put back in their place as what they are, very much dweebs. So they delude themselves in this particular way with a internal persona that they create for themselves so that they can feel cool. So this is a very wide-reaching subject just by you saying, well, we are cool. Well, the other thing that I'll finalise this little rant on, Neil, is that you don't get to decide whether or not you're cool or not. That is decided by the people around you.
Yeah, the people around me validate that. I've been cool since birth.
I mean, a sense of self-confidence is definitely something that you would ascribe coolness to, in my humble opinion, Neil. You have to have the ability to tell you, like I did just a minute ago, like, I know I'm cool. That's so self-confidence, though, isn't it?
Are you saying Shakespeare was ahead of everybody when he said all the world's a stage? Is that what you're talking about here?
That's absolutely spot on, Neil. Yes, very much a fitting use of the Shakespearean communication, let's call it. So, yes, when Shakespeare, or Bacon, depending on your conspiratard ilk, suggests that all the world's a stage, that is exactly what I am talking about. You know, every man plays his part, but that can be perceived in two different ways. One, that the part you are playing has some consequence on a world that you inhabit. Now, if you listen to, I keep forgetting this guy's name, the guy that's been talking about the race that people perceive their world to be. I've got an example of that on a slight tangent for my kid that I was telling her on the way to the hospital today. A sketch where there's these three women in an office and the one's really young and she says, right, well, it's the end of July. See you at the end of summer. And they're all like, what are you talking about? It's like, well, it's summer break, right? Like, no, this is your job. You don't get a summer break. You just keep working. And the kid's like, looks horrified. She's like, what? She's like, yeah, you don't have summer break. You just keep working. And the girl says, well, what will I have to look forward to? The other two slightly older women go, I had a rebate on my boiler. And the other one goes, death. And that's their outlook. So I was explaining this so I could offer a few pearls of wisdom to my daughter in terms of her career choices and general outlook on life. Now, again, let's put a bow around all of this. I personally teach my two girls that the moment you are in now is the most important thing. And you need to be able to look back and be able to say, hand on heart, I wouldn't change a thing. Everything's sweet. Now, I do feel like that about the last 10 years. But what's changed is the importance I can now ascribe to it in this moment versus the perceived importance I ascribe to it in the moments past. So let's go back 5 years when I'm full in debate and raging at everybody, blood boiling, ready to set the world straight about how flat it is. Now, I look back on that person and kind of cringe because that person, that version of myself, as much as it was worthy to acquire the information that I'm literally going to have to use in a couple of hours to edit the book with, right? That information is extremely useful and can be used and is used to convey the message we currently convey with a confidence that is only possible if you know your opponent's position to the point where you can steelman their version of their events accurately and still demolish them without even needing to present any information whatsoever. Now, we are at that stage when we say Earth is measured flat, but that means that with hindsight, arguing with some other guy on the internet who has no consequence about how Earth is dealt with, they're not cartographers, they're not pilots. I mean, there are going to be, and no one's mentioned this in comments or anything, but exceptions to every one of these rules I'm broadly summarising. When I say you're not a pilot, you're not a surveyor, you're not a cartographer, you're not developing the latitude system for a map, you know, you're not doing anything of any significance. You know, and if you are those people, to keep this concise, you'd be only standing on the shoulders of the former great men that have developed those systems for you to study and utilise to your own financial ends, you know, making money as a surveyor. You know, I can say this without a hint of irony, having literally supplied staff to the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors when I was a recruitment consultant. So I understand how these people can be employed and with various different tasks within the subject that I say the people we argued with 5 years ago are not experts in. The reality is that the argument on the internet has no bearing on how Earth is dealt with. It's useful for us to have this argument because then you can corral the type of person that you want to have the argument into a position to be arguing. Now, we've dealt with that over the last couple of years when we summarise how you, very much my audience, are majoritively a conspiratorial type. And that's intentional. If you're here as a flat earther, you're here to create a stereotype that the world can brace against. Now, that's not to say that with a little bit more concern that I don't really have, I could study and analyse the dweebs for their road to being anti-flat earthers. The problem is I just don't care about them. In fact, quite the contrary. I think most of them are quite vile. These dweebs that we deal with have been given internet brave pills and therefore have become a disgusting version of themselves that they'd never allow in society because they'd have the living shit kicked out of them for it, and they know it. Now, they're very angry at me at the moment and want me turning into the police because I've pointed this out to them. Yes, this persona you've created online is the type of persona that would have the ever-living shit kicked out of you. If you put that mask on in public, you would not get away with it. Now, for most of the persona that I portray online, it is pretty much exactly the same as I would go out in public with. And it does get me, in some respects, this is a similar type of treatment. I'm generally considered a pretty cool guy. I'm not going to go over the top in that regard. It's not like people are lining up to get my autograph or anything. But the point is that if we were so inclined, we could look at the journey that our opponents have been corralled into, inconsequentially arguing about how they say Earth is a ball. You can't have anybody of any significance doing that. And there's a very limited priesthood that are protected, very heavily protected, from interacting with people like us. You're talking about your Sagans and your Coxes and your deGrasse Tysons, right? They're never going to be interacting with us because they need to be kept separate. But they are, in and of themselves, positioned to be scapegoats for a subject that they cannot verify when it comes to heliocentrism. So there's a finite amount of control exercised in the upper echelons of the dissemination of heliocentrism as a religion, because it simply isn't the case. But that is held here through habit, through self-perpetuation. I don't know how it's managed to be in that position, but people are doing this of their own volition now. But in the same way that we can't control how a perceived hidden hand controls the algorithmic favoritism offered to dweebs to fight for the globe and for conspiratards to come and fight for flat Earth, what we can do is say that this fragile house of cards called heliocentrism has a foundation that's incredibly strong. And it's a flat Earth that it is all built on, without exception. In terms of the actual practical application, the things that the guys at the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors could all hold their heads up and declare is that the foundation of the surface that will be measured is flat. And none of what we do is consequential to what they do. The same applies to the systems that were developed for the latitude grids to later turn into globes. They are flat Earth measurements and always will be. Nothing I say will change that. I am not consequential to the latitude system. I haven't made it. I don't think I've ever used it beyond debating about it. So to delude myself into thinking that I'm consequential means that I have to suddenly step back and go, am I cool? Now that I know what I actually do, I'm a glorified geography teacher. When it comes down to how I say, quite literally, I'm talking about the same thing the map guy's talking about. You're like, yeah, you're a geography teacher then, aren't you? That's what we have found ourselves in. So as much as we want to stack ourselves up on nice high pedestals and call ourselves cool, we are geography teachers. And I don't think you can call that cool.
The way we bring it is cool. The way we came to it is cool. Now, we're only joking around with the cool stuff. I understand that. But it takes a certain person to, after 10 years of going back and forth with these guys, to step back and say, oh, my goodness, the whole time it was measured flat from the beginning, right from probably the first debate you had when they used sea level. So I disagree.
No, what you're saying is cool is what you do as opposed to what you are. So how we have behaved through 10 years of persecution is how we behave, as opposed to what you could label yourselves now that we go, hang on a second, we're just geography teachers. We're teaching the world something they already knew, therefore inconsequential as geography teachers. We're lower down the pecking order. It's not even a career that's making us money. I mean, fortunately for me, I recognised this subconsciously and gave myself 2 hats. A YouTube hat. Now, you don't get much cooler than being a YouTuber. So from that perspective, I can say, well, I might be a geography teacher, but I'm a geography teacher on YouTube. The map guy can say the same. You got nothing for that, have you, Neil? Foiled again.
No, because when you mention your 2 hats, there's a lot. See, what I don't consider cool is the fact that people got the nerve, think they can message me and dog you in the process of messaging me. So I cut everybody off. To say that he's a middle-aged man begging for money. No, you chose this YouTube to be your work. This is what you do for a living. Now, they know all of this. You've said it a million times, but yet they feel they got to get it out in chat. They got to. So is that cool? Trying to make somebody look bad because they want to win a point? Or is it cool that we just absorb it all and move forward?
The reality is that they're talking about me in context of how cool I'm not, so that they can feel better. It's like, well, no, if you were cool, you wouldn't be too concerned about me. I'm just trying to think of an example. So if you got Mr. Beast, I'm not comparing myself to Mr. Beast because I don't care what Mr. Beast does. When Mr. Beast begs his way to more subscribers, is he suddenly uncool? He's one of the biggest YouTubers out there, making bank. But he's ultimately begging his little kiddie audience to buy his crap. I can, intentionally just did, make him sound quite dweeby and geeky. It's Mr. Beast, right? He's built up a reputation. He's got a huge YouTube channel. Am I going to demean him for begging his way to that position? Nah, because I don't care about Mr. Beast. I just had to think about where I could insert an example to comparatively do to another YouTuber what these individuals are doing to me. So why do you worry about what I'm doing? All the people who only make reaction videos, this is most of the dweebs, by the way, most of the anti-flat earthers, watch their shtick, and it is the same for all of them. What they all do is talk about other men. A lot of the time, me. Now, don't get me wrong, I've done my fair share of video reactions, but my predominance in what I do on my channel is not about my reaction to what another man has done. In fact, I have to try and push my audience and my panel to produce these materials for me to react to, because I can't be bothered to go out and accumulate rage bait information from my opponents because I don't care about them enough. You know, I've got to be presented with a Simon Dan video by somebody who's in my panel for me to go, okay, fine, we'll cover this crap, look at it and then react to it very much as a cold reaction. By contrast, our dweeby opponents on the anti-flat earth side, that is basically what they do. It's who they are. Sad, really. Their motivation is to go out and show another man's wrong. Bringing it back to this, that's what the people who are messaging you are doing. Now, I don't give a crap about any of these people. Now, this might sound harsh to the people on my panel, but unfortunately it extends to them too, right? That is to say, for the most part, there's friends, and I do tell them when they are friends, but for the most part, the people who are surrounding me on my own side, I don't care about them either, yeah? Therefore, I'm quite fickle when people flee the nest, jump out and fly and spread their wings. Now, sometimes they're squawking about how terrible Nathan is when they do so, but I don't care. I'm not listening. I'm not interested, right? I'm pecking my own feathers and I'm sorting out my own nest as opposed to watching them fly, right? So it works both ways. My lack of interest, my indifference towards my opponent does extend to my own side to a certain extent for contentment. Like I say, with the exception of people who have made as friends along the way. And even then, I'm still pretty fickle if they turn around and go, well, I'm going to make this personal about the subject matter. You're like, okay, well, then you ain't really a friend. It's not really about me as an individual. It's about me and what I say about flat earth. And our paths having crossed on that very specific and narrow shared subject. So, yeah, it doesn't necessarily mean that I'll also have a less fickle nature when it's people who I do call friends. So that keeps me I don't know, sane if I was too concerned, because there's so many people that come and go. We've had almost 2,500 shows. There's a lot of people that have come and gone from flat earth debate. Some of them noteworthy, some of them will get a mention because of their influence. I mean, as much as I could be suggested, as is my opponent, to hate on a certain individual because of their position in the opposite to my position, now I actually want to praise one specific individual for their examples that will get held in high esteem as time progresses. And that person's Conspiracy Cats. I salute you, sir. Because whenever I need an example of how the current demeanour in the subject matter is, there's Conspiracy Cats giving it me. Most recently, his words were, and I quote, "Are you not even pretending there's a debate anymore?" End quote. Conspiracy Cats. You're like, wow, how profound. That's absolutely spot on. I could not have summarised it better myself. Why are we pretending that there's a debate when there isn't one? No, I don't need to pretend there's a debate anymore. The question suddenly becomes, why have you asked this question? Well, because this particular individual wants there to be a debate. He's still on the opposite side of this former discussion and wants in his cognitive pain Earth to be spherical. And the way that dream is kept alive is by having dweebs argue with the cool conspiratards. Now, that idea was very painful when it was suggested a couple of months back that, well, there's no debate anymore. Why would I even care? Well, you're not going to even pretend there's a debate? No, there isn't one. No, there's only flat earth measurements that produce the ball. Now, for that particular individual, he was crucial to all of us on this show recognising how flat earth must be measured when he, quote, gave you a flat earth for that perspective he was using. You know, he was, that's not a quote, it was paraphrasing, but pointed out that he had a need to use earth flat. Now, he tried to dress it up by suggesting he was giving it to his opponents, us, in a debate. It's like, there is no debate. If you are measuring earth flat, Conspiracy Cats in this particular example, then you are measuring earth flat. And for what ends? There isn't one. We're inconsequential. He was inconsequential in this regard. He's no different to any other dweeb that tries to come and tell us we're wrong, so they can put us on a nice high pedestal and contrast themselves with how right they must be by making us wrong. But he's no different. He had no consequence in this subject. He's not created any maps. He's not done any cartography. He's not built any buildings. He's not coming up with a new calendar. He hasn't derived a new time structure. He's not doing any of those things. Therefore, him arguing about it and then being forced, inconsequential that he is, to utilise a flat earth in the form of earth measurements only served one purpose. Last but not least, he gave me a little quote about how interesting me being robbed by two former friends of the show was. He said, there isn't enough popcorn in the world, end quote. I'm like, you know what? You're right. This is a very interesting anecdote to round out my book with. Very interesting. I've read it. I mean, I wrote it, but I've literally seen it back in text and had it read back to me. And it is a glorious ending. I'm delighted. The middle bit's dragging on a little bit because it's tedious. At the moment, literally as we speak, I've got gravity as the subject matter on the table to be edited. It's very information rich. It's got lots of stuff to go through, but it's boring. I've fallen asleep whilst covering it. My wife's fallen asleep whilst covering it. It's a boring subject matter. It's dense in information that people will expect to see in the book because it's a flat earth book. So they'll expect a certain level of anti-flat earthism in the rhetoric being unpacked from a perspective of a gravity being claimed by our opponents. Now, even summarising it makes me want to roll my eyes and yawn, but it's necessary. It's got to be done. But it's the first time in the process where I woke up today and went, I'm not enjoying doing this, right? This is not me. I don't find this fun, editing my own book with the words that I've written into a more concise format. Because each time it's been done, you're like, I don't want to do it again. I don't want to go through gravity. Go on, Neil. It's the third time you've tried to interrupt me. Go on.
Well, because look at the information you're giving out. It's good information, but it's freaking painful to listen back to. I understand what you're going through. Sorry for interrupting, but you're right about that.
Yeah, you go through gravity, and if you go back and listen to yesterday's show, I'm talking about somebody in the same context. It doesn't matter that it's not gravity, it was Coriolis or something similar. And I'm going, you boring dweeb. You want to talk about gyros? That was it. You boring dweeb. Do you think this is going to get you laid? It's not. You're just boring everyone to sleep. Now, when I read my own words back for gravity, I have that level of introspection where I can go, my God, this is boring. It's needed, it's necessary, it's got to be in the book, and I've got to trim it down and get it right. There's a certain aspect that's incorrect that we have collectively talked about with regards to the letter to Bentley, where he's talking about the force not being a force that we can think of as a force, but isn't a force that's a conceptual space-time in the new rhetoric that replaces what he's discussing with Bentley. But ultimately speaking, there's an inaccuracy that was highlighted by refracted curvature that now needs amendment. Now, everything else in it, I'm reading back going, I'd like to just get rid of this when the sentences start to come out my wife's mouth. But by the end of the paragraph, or 2 or 3 paragraphs, I'm like, all of that was relevant. It could stay exactly as is and be basically fine. But it's so snoozeworthy. You know, you're going to get to chapter 7, 8, and maybe 9 of the book, which will be on Coriolis effect, gravity, and the R value. And you're just going to go, oh, man, this is a slog when you're reading my book. And I want it all to be fantastic. Now, there is a certain type of person out there that only wants to assess my ability to talk about the acquisition of the R value or its debate. There's a certain type of person in there that wants to see if they can go, actually, gyros do drift. Dweebs. And the same applies to gravity. So I've got to get it right. And there's, like I say, an expectation that it will be in there. It's a book predominantly about the housekeeping questions we've gone through on the show. And therefore, people who want the facts will be going to those chapters to get them. You know, they'll want it broken down. But for me, personally, I'm like, the gossip, the lowbrow, people talking about people, in this case, the people I've encountered from my perspective, is obviously going to be the most interesting for me. And anecdotal stories is like a soap opera. Therefore, easy on the ear, easy to digest, and more importantly than anything, entertaining. There's nothing entertaining about hearing pseudo-Riemannian space-time geometry being bent up into string theory. Nobody cares. It's boring. And I told my wife, we literally last night finished reading, not editing, that chapter 8 on gravity. And at the end, she was like, why do we care about string theory? I'm like, we don't. It's like, it's only created to be just higher than most people's pay grade so that you don't express your cognitive energy on that subject. It's left in the realms of, oh, well, smarter people than myself have figured this out. Now I can read and generally glean a vague understanding of string theory and 5th dimensional, 6th dimensional, 8th dimensional folding dimensions, and go, oh, this kind of is a bit of a brain squeeze for me. It's kind of hurting and giving me a headache. You're like, yeah, it's been like that for everybody in the subject because it's designed to keep you in the dark. You can read about it, but you're not going to understand it. But who does? Well, it's nonsense. It's complete garbage. You know, you've got length, breadth, and depth. Mathematical concepts that we use to describe things, especially with Cartesian planes, in the form of things like GPS and mapping. But ultimately, with any other mathematical respect that's not necessarily to do with our subject here on Flat Earth Debate, these steadfast concepts like dimensions have been added to and raped so that they can create bullshit narratives about religions of being on a bull. Now, they need that to be complicated, more complicated than you want to invest in, especially when it has no fruitful outcome. Beyond dweebs, little geeks thinking, this'll get me laid, this'll get the lads in the pub to shout and cheer for me when I'm on the table talking about gravitational accretion. No, they won't. Everybody hates you. You're boring everybody in the bar. Nobody wants to hear it, and most of the time, because you're a dweeb, you will be shut up and shut down by the people around you who don't want to frickin' listen to it, you boring twat. But in your fantasy, you're stood on the table regaling people with the dimensional descriptions of fifth dimensions bending upon themselves, but you can't experience being in the fourth dimension because you're only three-dimensional. Imagine if you were a line. Everyone looks at you and goes, I hate this guy. What a dweeb. Shut up. We're talking about the football. Sit down. Nobody wants to hear about fourth dimensional time geometry bending on itself and how I can't experience it. You're just a boring dweeb. Now, that anger from the jock at the table at the bar is the same feeling most people will get when they come across this subject of their own volition if they're so inclined. They'll look at it and go, my God, this is just that little bit more complicated than I want to mentally invest in. Like, time is precious. There's, for me, girls out there. Why would I want to invest my time in this boring shite? Well, for the dweebs, the people who oppose this stuff's very important. For the people on the flat earth side, the conspiratards, they want the fuzz and excitement of some perpetual idea that there's a hidden hand controlling everything and creating deceptions like 9/11 and JFK, and it's all very exciting. People make movies about this sort of stuff, but that isn't necessarily going to require a heavy degree of investment, just enough adrenaline to keep you going through the process of initially finding out that there is a conspiracy to talk about. And then maybe do a bit of research by the way of the experts who've dedicated a bit more of their life to these conspiracies. And Bob's your uncle. You're ready to be a flat earther. Meanwhile, over on the other side of the fence, you've got these dweebs that think, incorrectly, that them knowing about string theory and dimensions and gravity, they think that this is valuable. Like, this is going to be getting them on the table and getting the people around them. They're delusional. Now, they don't want to go and tell like-minded dweebs like themselves about this stuff because they'll just have some other spot-faced idiot dweeb telling them actually back at them. Nobody wants that. They want to tell the cool kids that they're wrong, right? So this has all been heavily orchestrated for a bunch of idiots, that's us, to sit around and discuss something that's inconsequential to all of our lives.
To be honest, though, whenever the show got into heavy, heliocentric nonsense, I couldn't take it. I used to check out. I never liked discussing things like that. Just bored the hell out of me. I was interested in a scientific method. I was all on board for that, learning all of that. Very, very helpful, because I did not know. But when it got to heliocentrism, I checked out. So this was perfect for me when 10th Man came with celestial navigation. And from that point on, I'm all in. And now I'm all out because it doesn't mean anything anymore.
Not that you're all out. It's just you can be apathetic to the creation of a discussion that you don't need to be having. That is to say, we can now start looking at things that are a lot more fun. Look how happy I am. I'm sitting here eating grapes and talking to you, Neil. This is fantastic, but this is just being a YouTuber. But in terms of what's making me happy, I no longer have to, beyond writing my book and editing my book, concern myself with a lot of these heliocentric aspects that you hated and wanted to, quote, check out from. And me, I describe as being cognitively expensive and therefore not necessarily being worth the investment cognitively in. The juice is not worth the squeeze. Why would you bother if it's not going to turn you a dime? It's just there for you to argue with, potentially down the road with a load of conspiracy idiots that have come to the subject and don't know what you know because you're a little dweeb and have spent your time since 12 years old educating yourself further in the heliocentric religious worldview. And, by way of the orchestration of the information in the first instance, ignoring the fact that Earth must be flat for you to have this little delusion that you think you're so welcome around the people that you will sniff your own farts, basically, when you're talking about it. But no one likes the smell of your farts, by metaphor. No one wants to hear you spew this garbage. It's boring. But might be useful to argue with a few conspiratards later down the road when they challenge you and say, nah, it's not a ball. Not it's flat. That's done by the geography class. There's a stunned silence in the flat Earth debate over the years when someone actually says those words. Well, isn't sea level just flat? Silence. Or you get that one dweeb, that bold dweeb that wants to lay down on the chopping block ready for the sword to go through his own neck. Actually, level and flat are not level and flat, they're curving. You're like, okay, dweeb, you just signed your own death warrant. with your idiot nonsense doublespeak that violates the axiomatic principle you use to describe curve from. That would be a flat planar aspect that will be bent in the pseudo-Riemannian space-time geometry of a geodesic. But the geek knows that, and he's got that ready for you, cool kid. Right, what can we now do, though, that's more fun than going through this stuff that is a push to try and make amusing? Well, we can look at the people who study the subject. We can dissect the values and virtues of the dweebs who oppose us. Yeah, I'm not interested in talking about whether or not you have bent geodesics in space-time anymore. Been there, done that. It's boring. Meanwhile, let's have a look at you. What do you do? Oh, you are a dweeb! And you're very interesting to dissect, very amusing, because you're sad and worthy of laughing at. So it all comes back to them. It all comes full circle. They've tried to get away from the dweeb persona that they couldn't shake in high school that got them laughed at by learning about their 12-year-old fascination in something that seemed cool, right? Rockets going to space, Star Trek and Spaceballs. That's what they thought was interesting. That's what they've leaned into, the people who are opposing us. Now we go, we don't care, it's measured flat. Deal with it or don't. We don't care. What we will do, though, is have a little look at you. And what do you know? You are quite amusing to be studied. To be pulled apart in terms of how boring you are and how what you insist that I discuss this boring shit with you. Number one, I wouldn't piss on you if you were on fire. Number two, your insistence is the kind of thing that societally get you a slap. And number three, what you are insisting on us talking about is boring. So recognise that we're not going to have those discussions anymore. There's no need. It's just measured flat. It's very easy when we get into those discussions with you, which we don't really want anymore because they're boring. They always ended up in you using flat earth measurements. So we don't even have to have the discussion. Go and discuss it with another dweeb. It won't take long. I'll assure you, Nathan Oakley telling you this, not asking, not debating, assuring you, you will use flat earth measurements whenever you measure Earth. Irrespective of if you want to view the world with a lens of sphericity, you will still need to push the light through that lens and describe it with respect to a planar surface, like conspiracy cats did to bring this full circle when describing perspective. You might have the outlook that Earth's a sphere, but ultimately you'll be measuring it flat to achieve that ends. Now that we know that, why would we have the discussion with you? You, as a person to be looked at, in terms of how you're behaving and what you're doing, is much more interesting. We can turn you into a soap opera. You can become a more interesting part of my book than discussing bent pseudo-Riemannian space-time geometry.
Nah, but when you're getting someone in chat, Neil, did you check out because the topic went over your head? No, I could Helio with the best of them. It's just like Nathan said, a boring waste of time.
Checking out is what the public do when this information comes to them and it just seems too boring and too cognitively expensive to invest their time in. I'll just explain this. So asking Neil about whether or not he's checking out because the subject's too hard for him. Now, Neil's put the time in. Neil has assessed the information and gone, I don't want this. It's boring. Now, he knew it balls to bones when he was studying it. It's like, this isn't me. Right? Neil, it's not you to talk about gravity and Coriolis. It's boring. Neil recognised that instantaneously. He didn't check out, though. There was something about what we do here that kept him interested. And as I've pointed out many times, so long as there are people out there debating about flat Earth, the flat Earth subject becomes evergreen. The only way it will ever vanish is if the world stops having a one-world religion. Now, there might be a replacement for that, but it's not going to come in my lifetime. It might. We might witness the crumbling of heliocentrism, but as it crumbles, that will be accessible under the same evergreen banner of flat Earth. Now, what do people really want when, not Neil, but the general public check out? Because it's too cognitively expensive to look into fourth-dimensional pseudo-Riemannian space-time bending, or non-inertial turning reference frames beneath inertial frames of reference to describe a not actual deflection of an item travelling straight through the inertial reference frame. That would be Coriolis effect. If you heard that and went, what? Yeah, you're not wrong. It's boring. It's just a fact, right? But we collectively didn't check out. We reached the point where we can now concisely summarise every aspect of heliocentrism through 10 years of debate as having always had the need for a flat Earth measurement in the first instance. So as subject matter experts in flat Earth, we can reach that summary quickly. But what that does is rob us, personally, of the fascination with debate, because there isn't a debate. That's the recognition. Doesn't mean there's no subject to cover. Doesn't mean there's no interest in you little dweeb. Yeah? I'm going to enjoy studying you all. We've already started hinting at it, right? Did it earlier with Simon Dan, describing how his entire shtick is having a little look at other men and their views. That's what Simon does. Very dweeby. Yeah? Now, me psychoanalyzing Dan, you could turn it around and go, well, there's four fingers pointing back at you when you point at Simon Dan. Yeah, you could say that. 3. But it's the fact we are all having that dose of self-reflection, that introspection that says, are we really the cool kids? Top of the show, I described us as geography teachers. At least the psychoanalysts of the world would be considered above geography teachers. But yeah, ultimately our subject matter expertise is in geography. And why would people not check out? Why would people do the opposite? Instead of going, God, this is cognitively expensive to learn pseudo-Riemannian geometry. Well, if something's offered to them that's concise and easy to digest quickly so they can get on with their day. For example, saying Earth is just measured flat in all instances. Most people can wrap their head around that to an extent that they don't need to ask for more information. They can just take it on board and reassess it at a later date when necessary. They don't have to understand how, if you were a two-dimensional line, you couldn't experience the third dimension. If you were a stick man, you can't imagine what it is to be fat. Yeah? You don't need to go, that doesn't make any sense. Can you explain a bit more? That isn't necessarily the end of the bullshit that comes alongside heliocentrism when we describe the facts at the end of this 10-year process. Earth's just measured flat. That statement is easy. Most people can take that and get on with their day. And that's what they need to not check out from the subject. Now, to hold an interest for the people who are ushered to this, they need a lot of adrenaline to rush through their body. They need to be feeling like they've been lied to by a hidden hand that's controlling the world, that there were no planes on 9/11 and it was a directed energy weapon. Those are the people that take a certain Star Wars level excitement from the narrative of the worldview in the newspapers, get very excited for it and want to pass that on to next man, otherwise known as conspiracy theorists by the CIA definition of these people that are created as a result of these narratives being very much put out there, intentionally. Now, if you've studied enough about conspiracy, you'll know that what I'm saying is absolutely correct when I describe the intentional seeding of all of the various different stories. If you're in a sea of stories, how are you going to pick out which one's correct? Even if you do, there's next man with the next story to say you're wrong, even if you're right. That's how it's intentionally designed for you, the conspiratard, who makes your way, this is going to be jarring, to flat Earth! So, whoa, why are we now bringing this to flat Earth? Well, that's the type of person that talks about flat Earth. Yeah? I've written a song about it. Call it 9/11 Dirtbag. That's the final title for the song. And it's all about how conspiratards come to the subject, talk about flat Earth after learning zero about geography. They learn about 9/11 and COVID and flu vaccinations. That's what they learn about. That's their shtick. And any other of a million different assortments of conspiracies that are out there that people become experts in. And then what do you know? They become flat earthers. And does a flat earther talk about how flat Earth is measured, like I just did, to make it cognitively easy on the person listening? No. No, they talk about how it's not a ball and how you should be unpacking how non-ball shaped the world is. so that Dweeb can come along and go, actually, it is ball-shaped.
That just happened to me freaking yesterday, and I couldn't understand it for the life of me. A guy was saying, why doesn't Nathan talk about the data that the sun is not moving 15 degrees per hour? So ball earth rotation debunked. I'm like, ball earth, what ball, what rotation? What are you talking about?
Again, even if this wasn't a person on our own side, right? Like I said halfway through this very show, when it comes to somebody, it doesn't matter which side they sit on. My example was of a ball believer coming and giving us a so-called argument. This rotation of the sun, okay, that requires a description with an axis through a flat plane. So mathematically, to describe this, describes it with a flat plane of reference and elevation angle measurements of the sun. So you've got flat planes that are being used to do this. Sorry, I just snapped out there and almost fell asleep. It's so boring! 15 degrees rotation. You are boring. Now, I'm sorry if you're on my side and you're getting this as a way of this flat earther who's just put this information. I've come across a really good ball debunking. No, you were put in this position and told that you need to debunk a ball. That's what you were told. And it was justified left, right, and centre, all of which require a flat plane also. For you to have a place in an inconsequential discussion. You're not coming up with the systems to measure the sun. You haven't developed that into a time-based system. You haven't come up with a calendar. So what consequence is it if you say that we are not on a ball with this information? It isn't. But it means that some dweeb can come along and say, well, actually, you can only describe that from a ball. And so it goes on, with you arguing with some snot-faced, no-sleeve wiping dweeb. Now, I'm not your guy. I'm sorry. I do and have learned all this information, but that's the guy I look back on and cringe. That was me. Oh, dear. But what I now offer to my audience is the ability to take the information on without it being cognitively expensive, with a couple of different phrases. Earth's measured flat. It's really easy to understand. Even if you're trying to express a heliocentric understanding of an axial rotation, you still need a flat plane for the axis to traverse, to go through. It's described from a planar surface. Same is applied to Coriolis effect. The non-inertial turning reference frame Earth is claimed to be is a flat plane in the mathematical description. There is no getting away from our flat Earth is both measured and mathematically described as a consequence of its measurement in heliocentrism. But even saying it makes me feel cringe. It's boring. Earth's measured flat is nice and simple. And it can be dealt with and pushed to one side. Yeah? It can also be used for you to brush away idiots. Yeah? Oh, you're a flat earther? Well, what about the space and us looking back on Earth as a ball? Earth's measured flat. Be gone. Yeah? Now that didn't require the person who heard it and didn't invest anything cognitively in the understanding of this absolute truth go away and learn anything about. They could, if they chose to. They could learn also how a flat plane's utilised to create their form of globe belief. All of which could be used to bore the tits off people in bars across the planar surface we inhabit. If you want to. I'm suggesting you don't. I said it for months. Get on with your day. You found out Earth's flat. You don't need us anymore, right? By us, that former us was the dweeby versions of ourselves I now cringe at. Now, here and now, there's going to be more interesting avenues for us to explore now that we understand that we've reached the end of the discussion point. I can have another 2,500 shows looking from the outside in, looking over flat Earth rather than looking outwards from within it. That's what I'll be doing for the next 2,500 shows that I will produce. For those of you that think I'm checking out, that somehow writing a book is my swan song, because those were the very words used by the thieves who want to step away from this subject by using my book to do it. Now, there's no swan song for me. I'm very happy in my job that I do, and content to know that the horizons, flat that they are broadening with regards to us being able to look in from a psychological point of view at the overall discussion of flat Earth. Doesn't matter if you're on a ball side measuring Earth flat, or on the flat side talking about conspiracies. We can look over you. Now, there's another way you can look on it. Down on you. If you're still inside that subject matter, like there's a debate looking out, well, what are you going to see when you look out? You'll look me in the eye looking back down on you. So, for the people who are new enough to get here and just hear the few renditions of me saying, Earth's just measured flat, you can sincerely get on with your day. You don't have to fight the flat Earth to know how flat Earth must be measured. And if you do engage yourself with the discussion like it is a debate, you'll very quickly find that those words that resonated from me in the first place about how flat Earth is measured will hold true for your opponents. It won't take long for them to say, yeah, it's flat, but that's because it's really big. They used to say it all the time, and all it got us doing back in the day was scratching our heads. Well, what do you mean? What do you mean it's really big and that's why it's okay to be measured flat? It's just measured flat.
Yeah, and he told me with great enthusiasm, this is your opportunity to bring something new to the table. I'm like, excuse me? Earth is measured flat. Why am I debunking a sphere and rotation?
It's got a useful practical application for those who came up with it 500 years ago. They were trying to explain epicycles and what we now call retrograde motion. In other words, they've taken the flat Earth prerequisite elevation angle measurements of the stars and then looked at it with very outside the box thinking in order to explain how the lights in the sky move. That's it. That's what it's been useful for. Now, you can spin off that and say, oh, well, that's directly responsible for our calendars and our ways of interpreting when certain celestial orientations will give us certain dates that move around the calendars. You can infer time from this. There's a useful concept around every heliocentric corner, but they are all built on a foundation of flat Earth measurements. Now, given that both Neil and myself are in agreement in this regard, we've gone through the last 10 years kind of sneering at the information and going, oh, God, we've got to learn this. Yeah, it's very important. Got to do your due diligence. No, you don't. You don't need any of this crap. It was only being there to keep you under a certain level of control through fear when you were a heliocentrist. Now, if you do relinquish that fear-based mind control system when used to suggest that you are in mortal danger from the sky, then maybe you'll see some benefit from finding out that your former religion is wrong. But I'm not here to do that anymore. I'm not here to tell you that you're not on a ball. Number one, it's not incumbent on me to tell you what you're not. If you want to believe that you are the claimant. It is incumbent on you to prove that. But why? We're sat around a bar drinking drinks and talking about football, and you're the dweeb who wants to talk about the angle of the sun? Oh my God. Get a life. It's just measured flat. Now again, knowing how that is the case brings us to diagrammatical examples like the one on screen now, that you can describe the latitude system from a flat plane, measured from within a globe. Well, knowing this didn't get me laid once. Like literally, not once. But you can see it as important. That's up to you. Me, from this point forth, will be looking down upon the subject of flat Earth and analysing as an outsider. And if people want to drag me back into the arena, and that will happen when I'm out on my book tour, people will be like, oh, by the way, we've got this arsehole here that we didn't tell you was going to be on, and he's going to debate with you. And I'll just roll my eyes. I'll be like, okay, I'll sit and listen to this boring dweeb waffle on about his religion for 10 minutes until he uses a flat Earth measurement then. Fine. But before I do, go out and buy All Roads Lead to a Flat Earth by Nathan Oakley if you want to see a dissection of the process of utilisation of flat Earth measurements to put dweebs against conspiratards with no benefit to either, so they waste their time. But in terms of actual practical application, Earth's measured flat by all people, always, whenever measuring Earth. The same is true to create a heliocentric religion that this arsehole you've brought on unexpectedly will now try and argue for. But for the most part, other than when it's foist upon me, I'm not going to be interested in talking about the debate of flat Earth. I will try and promote my book, but there's going to be far more interesting subjects to look at moving forward. The psychology of the people who come to the subject is already, straight away, to me, more enjoyable. I like this introspection. I like assessing where we sit in this subject as former geography teachers that occasionally get dragged back into the geography. As much as we try and get away from this geography, they just keep pulling us back, Neil. It becomes farcical when you cross Godfather with geography, doesn't it? Keep pulling me back to geography.
Every time we get out, they pull us back in.
To the geography subject.
Heliocentrism. Bring this proof. Why he's not talking about this? It debunks the globe and the rotation. Oh, what did you not hear? We've been talking about how it's measured flat. Yeah, I get you.
Yeah, back to the same thing. It's measured flat in their rotation claim. Go ahead, John.
So why would anybody waste time debunking the existence of unicorns if no one's ever shown the existence of unicorns?
I want to ask you this question too, because I was talking with Adam about it yesterday, and it was about if nobody's observed Earth as a sphere, and he was trying to like make it science, and I'm like, yeah, but still, even if somebody was to observe Earth as a sphere, that's not a naturally observed phenomenon, is it?
No.
It's still just a concrete noun, right?
Is a description of what is will never fit into the scientific method.
But it will fit quite nicely into what it's been put into beyond our control. I'm going to phrase this carefully so it doesn't sound like I'm creating a hidden hand of my own. It's been put into a philosophy subject with logic. So they're taking absolutes and creating if statements. Now, our opponents, the most recent ones that we've had, find this very difficult when they come up against us because we're talking about statements of absolute fact. Now, they want to offer a tacit acceptance of those statements of fact, but then immediately take the statement of an Earth that's measured flat for angles, for the sake of argument, and turn it into a logical inference. If Earth is flat, whoa. You've just measured it flat for your claim. Why are you now putting it into an if statement? Well, because then you can take it from geography, shove to one side, because the science is going to use those geography flat Earth measurements to create Earth as a sphere. Then, when we point out that Earth as a sphere requires flat Earth measurements, you have the dweebs turn the flat Earth measurements they're using for their sphere into a philosophy. Like you can state it as an if. No, it's absolutely required. That has resulted in us offering up the rock and the hard place example. Either you accept that you require Earth to be measured flat for elevation, angle measurements, surface level, sea level, parallel eye level, whatever it is that they're utilising, or you don't, in which case you don't have any measurements to rely upon. The ones that you are relying on for your globe are flat Earth measurements. So it's either sink to your knees and acknowledge those flat Earth measurements you're measuring, you're a dweeb and you're not doing anything consequential, or relinquish them, in which case you've got nothing. Rock and hard place. But that's because we've suffered fools when we allow them to put it into an if statement. Like if Earth is flat, you can create your ball with it. If it isn't, you've got no measurements. You're like, no, we're going to move past the rock and hard place eventually as well. Like all things in flat Earth debate, yesterday's news is tomorrow's fish and chip wrapping. And the same is going to be true for the rock and the hard place, because we won't even want to entertain people who take it to a position of philosophy, because we're not going to care. I don't want to have this discussion with you. You're just a boring dweeb. The problem isn't the discussion. It isn't how interesting it was as a 12-year-old boy. It's you. You're the problem because you're boring everybody. You, anti-flat earthers, are all dweebs. Name one cool anti-flat earther. Go.
Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Who?
Neil deGrasse Tyson.
I've just got one word for you: waistcoat.
Well, he's got a good personality.
I'd just say it
He's
one more
not
time.
cool,
Maybe.
though.
Sorry, I don't think he heard me. Waistcoat. Did you hear me?
Yeah, he looks like a fine gentleman.
Sorry, and our fine gentleman's cool. No, he wears a waistcoat that's got little pictures of suns and moons on it. He is a dweeb.
Yeah, but he's captured the imaginations of a lot of people.
Yeah, like
Dweebs.
still the dweebs can do that, right? You can capture imagination as a dweeb. You can suspend disbelief as a dweeb. You can be very endearing as a dweeb, like that guy we covered the other day. When he's out talking about his trains and then suddenly he's playing with one of the seals at NASA. Yeah, very endearing. Still a dweeb.
I've always found him quite annoying.
Yeah, he's a magician.
Yeah, he's a magician without cool magic tricks, though. I mean, a good magician, he's got you freaking hovering, you know? He's gotten women in half. What is he doing?
Okay, let's just picture a scene like Ben Richards in The Running Man. And there's lights, there's smoke machines, there's bad guys with chainsaws and ice-making lasers, and there's the strippers that are walking out as the music plays and the fireworks go off and the men are blasted down a tunnel. That is cool. Now let's compare that to Neil deGrasse Tyson.
That stuff is flat.
It's not very
Cool.
entertaining.
Earth and atmosphere move as one. Not cool.
Tell you what isn't cool. If you watched the original Running Man with Arnold Schwarzenegger from the 80s, just for a second, I'm going to do something quite cruel. Picture all those really hot girls that were dancing in their leotards. You know, at the introduction when Killian's talking about Sub-Zero and all the different runners. You know what I'm talking about? The girls in the leotards with the permed hair?
Yes, I read the book. It was on the Bachman books. And
No, not the book. No, not the book. In the movie. Yeah? You know what I'm
Yeah.
talking about? Just picture them. If you've watched the movie, just for a second, take a moment to imagine those hot chicks dancing in their leotards. A lot of those women are now in their 60s and 70s.
Yeah, that sucks.
Yeah. So suddenly you're like, yeah, I remember that beautiful booty dancing in those very tight, bright neon leggings. What's that? She's now 67.
Actually, there was a movie on the other day with Arnold and Ray Don Chong was in it. I was like, wow, she was really pretty. And I looked her up now. Oh my God, she's hideous.
Yes, we could get into women hitting the wall, but we're not going to do that now because we're going to round out. So with that, I'm going to say if you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Programming Streams, then stay tuned as there will be an after show to follow. Unfortunately, if you are watching this live, this is where we bid you farewell. So another massive thank you to all of you who liked, commented, shared, subscribed, joined as a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member, hit me up on PayPal and Patreon and all that good stuff. I've been Nathan Oakley and I will see you all in the next video.
But when you measure it flat, it contradicts that. I'm spitting flat facts and that. And I know you don't like that. Google Maps is flat, it presents elevation profiles like that. I'm a spitting flat earth king. Sentence has a ring, doing my own thing. If earth was a big roast chicken, factually finger licking chicken. We just got the measurements missing. I'm spitting eggs and begs, begging the question lesson. I've said it before, time after time. I'm the spitting flat earth king of rhyme.